Chapter 15. Single file, we charged through small thickets, dodged around cedar trees and rocks, following David towards the ridge. A couple of times I thought I heard a low rumbling sound like a far distant thunder, but with all the racket from 6 horses snapping twigs and scattering rocks under their hooves, it was hard to tell. At the base of the ridge, I expected David to slow the horses to a walk. It was a steep climb, and there were a lot of loose stones. Instead, he charged up it, driving Yankee even harder than before. Sarge tripped and stumbled as he clambered over the rocks. I didn't blame him for throwing me before. If I had seen the rattlesnake, I would have run too. I'd grown fond of Sarge, and I was afraid he might get hurt trying to run up this steep grade. Still, for a second, I thought about changing my horse's name from Sarge to David. That's what I could at least get a little enjoyment out of kicking him. I started to slow once, but Les's horse was right on our rump. I kept kicking Sarge. He stumbled and almost went to his knees. Charlie's pack horse began to pull back on the lead road. The gap between him and David grew. At a wide spot in the trail, Charlie motioned Mother to go around him. A bit further up the ridge, he waved me around too. Finally, we reached the top. That's when I saw an enormous blue-green cloud down in the valley of the gondola. It had been hidden from our sight by the thick cypress trees and the hills. Here on top of the ridge, the cloud was so big it blackened out half the sky. The front of it seemed to roll and tumble like a log going down a hill. From here I could hear thunder too, a loud, deep rumbling sound that never seemed to stop. A bolt of lightning slashed across the sky. It went straight up and down and was as big around as one of the cypress trees back on the river. Then a loud bang hit my ears. It wasn't the rumbling sound of rolling thunder. It was sharp, loud, angry. It took my chest. It took the leaves of the little mesquite trees beside me. I hated loud noises. My stomach seemed to roll with the thunder. I felt queasy. David pulled his horse to a stop. Mother drew up beside him and I beside her. Another flash of light came from the huge cloud. It was so bright I had to blink. David sat completely still. I watched him. As he counted to 10, his voice a whisper. The loud crack came. Again it rattled my chest. It made the chills race up my spine. 2 miles, he muttered. We'll never make it. He looked behind us. Charlie and the pack horse topped the ridge. David waved at him to hurry. While Charlie and Les were catching up to us, David jumped from his horse and untied his bedroll. Charlie pulled his horse to stop beside me. David glanced up at him. Knife! Charlie slipped the knife from his scabbard and pitched it across Mother and me. It was a gentle toss, and David caught it by the handle. He felt around with his other hand for the center of the 2 blankets. Then with a knife he made a slit right in their middle. I frowned, wondering why he was cutting up 2 perfectly good blankets. But before I had much time to wonder, he told Mother to take off her hat. He had her lean down as he slipped the blankets over her. When her head appeared through the hole he had cut, he took her hat and pulled it down hard on her head. Knife, he barked again. He pitched the knife back to Charlie. Charlie had climbed down from his horse and untied his bedroll. He caught the knife and slit his blanket too. Then he had taken off my hat. There wasn't time for me to say a word before he stuck my head through the hole in the blanket and pulled my hat out of my hands. While I was leaning towards him, he smoothed the blankets and shoved the hat down on my head. He pushed it so hard that my ears folded almost in half. Then both men were on their horses. Charlie, David called above the constant chest-shaking sound of the thunder. You fall behind, leave the pack horse. We can always come back for him. Let's ride. With that, we charged on again. This time it wasn't a gallop. This time it was a dead outrun. The blankets flopped around me. The ends popped behind me in the wind. We crossed the flat at the top of the ridge and raced through a little valley, then over the top of another small hill. The storm was closer now. I could smell the rain even beneath the blankets. I felt a sudden coolness. It was almost cold. A drop of rain thumped on my hat, then another. I tilted my head to the side so I could see from beneath the wind-wide brim. The blue-green cloud wasn't over us yet. I wondered where the rain was coming from. We had only ridden a mile when the wind hit. Then I knew where the rain was coming from. It was a roaring wind, a wind that pushed the rain far in front of it, a wind that whipped the little cedar trees and leaned them over to the side. Beneath me, I could feel Sarge leaning on it, running. He struggled against the fierce gust that struck us. Then there were more drops of rain thumping my hat. We came to a wide, flat area with nothing but grass. The wind whipped and rustled the long, dry stems from under my brim. I glanced up at the storm again. The rolling, tumbling part at the front of the cloud was right on top of us now. It was so close that I could almost reach up and touch it. A sudden chill of fear raced up my spine. It wasn't a fear of the lightning that flashed in enormous bolts from the sky or the rattle of the thunder that shook my chest from deep down inside. It wasn't the fear of the solid wall of rain that I could see coming toward us from the little hill next to the flat where we rode. It wasn't the fear of what might be lurking, hidden from view, behind that wall of water. It was something more, something much, much more, something I couldn't explain. It was like things as insignificant and tiny and unimportant and fragile as mere humans didn't belong this close to something so enormous and powerful and magnificent. It wasn't like a storm rolling towards us. It was like the hand of God himself tumbling across the Texas hillside. The feeling made me tremble. I wanted to get out of here. I wanted to go home. The wall of water hit us ahead of me. I could barely see David. The rain came down in sheets like waves on the beach in California. Sheet after sheet of water swept over us. Within seconds, I was soaked from the hat on my head and the two thick blankets that covered my back, clear down to my underwear. I was drenched. A sudden sharp pain jabbed at my back. I jerked. Something hit me again. There was a loud pop on my hat, then another stinging pain on my side. Hail. Big round chunks of ice bounded against me, solid and bigger around than the end of my thumb. They hit the ground with such force that they bounced up in the air like marbles being dropped on a wood floor. The hail scampered everywhere. Again and again it stung my back. Even through the blankets it hurt something fierce. I could only imagine what it was like for David and Charlie. They had nothing but thin blue shirts to protect them from the pounding chunks of ice. Ahead of me I could hardly see Mother. David was just a misty form in front of her. He leaned down against the side of the horses, using Yankee's neck to fend off some of the driving hail. The rain and ice were coming down so hard I didn't think we had to slow down. We couldn't see. I knew we were going to die. The hail was harder now. It hit with such force I knew it would rip through my blanket. I winced from the pain. I couldn't stand much more of this. I knew Sarge couldn't either. Any second he would fall under the pain of this driving storm. All of us could be beaten to death by the angry hail, and just as all hope was beginning to die, we were there. Before us, a small house-like shelter loomed through the rain. It looked more like a large lean-to than a house. David jumped from his horse before he even stopped. As soon as Mother came up beside him, he yanked her from the saddle and virtually shoved her towards the doorway. He did the same to me. For some reason, I didn't mind his rough treatment. I knew he was only trying to hurry us out of the storm. He was only trying to get us to where it was safe. I raced to the open doorway on Mother's heels. It was dark inside. I couldn't see a thing. It smelled old and musty too. Still, it was such a relief to be out of the storm. I heaved a sigh, thankful at least to reach safety. A flash of lightning came. It was close enough and bright enough to light up the darkness inside the sod cabin. I jumped. My heart stopped. There in the shadows at the far side of the cabin were two men. They wore long rain slickers that made them even harder to see in the darkness. The lightning flashed again. I could see their faces. They looked dirty, crusty. At their sides they held 6 shooters. They were aimed at me and my mother. Chapter 16. David was right behind me, blinded by the lightning outside and the darkness of the cabin. He couldn't see either. I stood frozen in the open doorway. He bumped into me, then gave me a gentle shove. Go on in. He pushed me only a step or two. I leaned back against him. Les crowded in behind us. Lordy, Les said, shaking the water from his hat. Ain't been caught out in one of them since I was a kid. That was a mean howl. Sure, I am glad to. Another flash of light came. Les stopped in the middle of his sentence. He and David saw the two men. Don't even think about it, boys. The deep, soft voice, as slow as syrup dripping over the Charlie's pancake, came from the darkness beside the door. I turned and blinked. My eyes had adjusted a bit to the darkness. I saw another man standing beside the broken door that leaned against the wall to my right. He held a big, double-barreled shotgun at his side. It was aimed at David and Les. Get your fingers away from your sidearms. Come on in. Slowly, hesitantly, David and Les took their hands from above their holsters and raised them over their heads. The man behind the door was bigger than the other two. He had a black hat. A white beard masked his rugged face. I noticed all this in just an instant. Then my eyes went back to the gun. I hated guns. I hated the darkness of the cabin. I hated the storm. I hated being captured by 3 outlaws who would probably kill us. Hard telling what else they might do to Mother and me, but most of all, I hated guns. With hands held above his head, David motioned us into the center of the room. He moved close beside me, trying to keep himself between me and the 3 men. Wet and cold, Mother, David, Les, and I huddled together. Once we were inside, the big man looked out into the rain. When he saw no one else there, he shoved the broken door back to cover the opening. One of the men on the other side of the room struck a match. light flooded the room. There was 2 candles on a rickety table beside him. With a match he lit them. Holding his revolver in one hand and raising one of the candles with the other, he moved toward us. "You two short fellas, get your hands out from under them ponchos," he ordered. "Bring 'em out slow and easy. Get 'em up." I did as I was told. The blankets about my shoulders were soaking wet and heavy. They seemed to pull down on my arms, making it hard for me to stand with my hands above my head. Mother took her hands from under the blankets so the man could see them, but instead of raising them above her head, she took off her hat and wiped her forehead. She stepped towards him. "We mean you no harm, sir," she said politely. Her hair flopped in wet ringlets around her back. "We were merely trying to get in and out of the storm." "Lordy," the man gasped. "It's a woman." I started to step forward too and take my hat off. With his hip, David bumped me back. A quick glance from those dark blue eyes told me to stay still. The man with the candle came nearer. He held it close to Mother and looked at her. Then he moved towards David, and as David kept inching closer, trying to keep himself between me and the probing, tight eyes of the man with the gun. "My name is Mrs. Reuben Guthridge," Mother continued. "I'm from San Francisco, and we have come here in search of a buffalo herd that has been reported in this area." The man with the candle gave a little jerk. His mouth flopped open, and the 6-shooter he was holding on us dropped loose to his side. "You're that girl the newspaper man has been hunting for," he gasped. "The newspaper man in San Francisco has sent telegrams all over this area of the country trying to locate you. He's offering a $500 reward for word of your whereabouts." Mother gave a little squeal. The hat dropped from her right hand, and she slapped her other hand over her mouth. She spun to face me. "Amanda," she almost cried, "I forgot to telegraph your father from Kerrville. That was the last thing he said in his telegram. Let me know when you get to Kerrville, and let me know you and Amanda are safe." She buried her face in hands. "I forgot. I'm terribly sorry if we frightened you, man." The man with the candle opened his slicker and slipped his revolver into holster. "I'm Marshal Ted Benton out of Fort Smith, yonder." He pointed with his thumb at the man behind him. "That's Dan Park. He's a Texas Ranger, the man with the shotgun. Stan Garner. He owns most of the land around these parts." The big man with the beard lowered his shotgun. The other man opened his coat and put his 6-shooter away. Marshal Benton handed Mother the candle. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he apologized again. "We didn't mean to scare you. Just don't hurt to be careful, and you kind of started us bursting through the door like you done." His face was wrinkled and weathered from the sun. He was dirty and rough looking. He leaned around Mother, and I thought his face might crack when he tried to smile at us. "You boys put your hands down. Get them wet blankets off. Make yourself to home." My arms flopped down to my side. I couldn't believe how they ached from holding up the heavy, rain-soaked blankets. David and Les dropped their hands too. Everyone seemed to smile. Everyone seemed to relax. I wiggled my hands inside the blanket and started to pull them over my head. Suddenly I stopped. "Claire, Charlie," I gasped. "He's still in the storm. We have to find him." "Ain't no need hunting for Charlie." The voice came from outside, somewhere behind the wall where the Texas Ranger named Park stood. "Charlie's right here." All of us jumped and turned to face the unexpected sound of a man's voice. Charlie wasn't there. Then his voice came from a different place outside the wall. "These fellas really are lawmen. They ought to have badges." There was a pause, and the sound of Charlie's voice moved again. "They ought to have a reason for being out here too. Peggers and somebody or something." The hail had stopped, yet it was still pouring rain outside. It was dark, but I caught a movement, a shadow that broke. That little light there was, creeping through the cracks between the sod. "David," he called, this time from the side of the cabin. I'll keep him covered with this rifle. You check him out." Holding one hand above his pistol, David took the candle from Mother. The marshal named Benton opened his slicker. When David drew near, he sort of stuck his chest so David could get a good look at his badge. "Parked at the same papers?" David asked. Marshal Benton smiled. "Inside vest pocket. You want to reach for them, or you want me to?" David nodded. "Tell them to go ahead." Marshal Benton produced a wad of crumpled papers and held them out for David. David unfolded them. "Got an arrest warrant on a fellow by the name of Spud Carlson." David called towards the wall where Charlie's voice had last come from. He unfolded the second one. "Got a writ to transfer him from custody in Texas back to Arkansas for a trial there." And he unfolded the paper. "Got a wanted poster on him too. Picture, square chin and a scar on his right cheek." David smiled at the wall. Picture don't look like any of these men. Think it's safe for you to come on in." There was a long silence. Then Charlie's voice came from the other side of the cabin. "I'm wet and cold, but I'll feel a lot more comfortable if that big fella won't holding that shotgun." The big man with the beard laughed. He pitched the shotgun across the room. David caught it. It took Charlie only a moment to slip through the broken door and into the cabin. He didn't have a rifle, like he'd said, only his knife. One side he slipped it into the scabbard. The big man beside the door started to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling laugh. It seemed to shake the cabin like the thunder had. Then, laughing even harder, he offered his hand to Charlie. You got the drop on two of the best lawmen in the country and on me. Didn't even have a gun. He laughed again, then took off his long yellow pommel sticker and offered it to Charlie. Only been two people in my whole life whatever got the drop on me. He continued while Charlie took off his wet shirt and put on the dry slicker. One was a hired gun by the name of Wage Edger. The other was a Comanche Indian by the name of White Hawk. You're a top hand, Charlie. You ever need a job, just let me know. Charlie smiled back at him. Heard of that Eggers fella, but I never met him. Do know White Hawk, though. He pointed to David. That's his son. Suddenly the men were the best of friends. They began shaking hands and talking and moving around the cabin. Detective Ranger Lane Park lit some more candles. They laughed and talked about David's father and the man named Garner told of how when he first came here, they used to try and steal horses from each other. They talked about troubles they encountered on the trail and about people they knew or might have heard of, and they totally forgot about Mother and me, standing cold, wet and dripping in the middle of the room. Shivering, Mother turned to me. I'm sorry, I forgot to telegraph your father, she pleaded. I bet Reuben's worried sick. It's been over 2 weeks since I telegraphed him from San Antonio. I'm so sorry, I have to find a way to get word to him that we're all right. I took off my hat and fluffed my hair. Then Dan Park was standing in front of me with the light from all the candles flooding the cabin. It was bright enough to see. He was much younger and not nearly as mean as he had first appeared when he was holding his gun on us from the shadows. As he came towards us, he swept his big hat. Thick curly locks of red hair covered his head like a crown. His grey eyes never left mine when he took off his yellow slicker. Best get out of them wet blankets, man. We've been on the trail for over a month. So he held out the long slicker. The coats are might smelly and they tend to feel a bit sticky in warm weather, but at least it's dry. His eyes sparkled as he smiled at me. I pulled the heavy wet blankets over my head and dropped them to the floor. I reached for the slicker. Dan Park was still smiling at me, only somehow his smile was different. His grey eyes danced and twinkled. It made me feel a bit strange. I glanced down. My white blouse was wet. It was so thin it clung to my second skin. I could see through it as if I was wearing nothing at all. Suddenly I felt very, very warm. Then David was standing there. He snatched the slicker from Dan and wrapped it around me. I couldn't help but notice how tight his dark blue eyes were, how angry and stern his face seemed. As he wrapped his stiff yellow material around my shoulders, his eyes never left Dan Park. The Texas Ranger cheeks turned red. Quickly, he went back to sit with the other men. David stood there for a moment. He held the slicker about my shoulders. It felt good. Marshal Benter brought his slicker to Mother. As soon as she took it, he went back across the room. David returned to others then too. I felt strange. I was a bit embarrassed, but still, I liked the way Dan had looked at me. I liked even better the way David had rushed over and wrapped the coat and his arms around me. It tickled me how angry he looked at the ranger. It made me feel safe and warm. My insides almost seemed to flutter. David was jealous. Thanks for listening.